Welcome to the annual ELD Standards Training. This training, related to English learners, meets the requirement of Tennessee State Board Rule. This training was created by the MNPS Office of English Learners. The mission of our EL team is to engage, empower, and value non-English language background families, students, schools, and community. Our vision is to support English learners with the social, emotional, cultural, linguistic, and academic skills necessary to excel in higher education, work, and life. Here you see the 4 goals of our English Learner 5-year strategic plan. This 5-year plan is designed to support MNPS to advance equitable access to educational opportunity for all ELs and bring about improved academic achievement, language outcomes, and overall self-efficacy as a result. Goal 1 is shared responsibility for the education of ELs. Goal 2 is integrated, effective instruction. Goal 3 is supported, successful students. And Goal 4 is informed and engaged families. It is our hope that you will see a through line to all 4 goals as a result of this training. Today you will explore 5 key topics: the Tennessee English Language Development Standards, appropriate instructional methods to use with grade level content standards, the stages of English language acquisition, the requirements of individual learning plan development and implementation, and strategies for collaboration around ILPs. This infographic comes from the Tennessee State Department of Education. It shows the population of K-12 students in the state and the total population of EL students, over 80,000 across Tennessee. The top 5 non-English languages spoken in our state are Spanish, Arabic, Swahili, Vietnamese, and Somali. MNPS is proud to serve the largest population of multilingual learners in the state, with over 20,000 multilingual learners in our district. MNPS students represent more than 130 native languages. Our district's top 5 non-English languages are Spanish, Arabic, Kurdish, Somali, and Swahili. In the first section of our training, you will learn about the Tennessee English Language Development Standards. Tennessee recently adopted a new set of ELD standards called ELPA 21. ELPA 21 is made up of 10 standards. Depending on the context, you may see the term ELD, English Language Development, or ELP, English Language Proficiency Standards. We will use the terms interchangeably throughout this training. Take a moment to review the 10 standards shown on this slide. These standards were developed with content standards in mind. They show what students need to do with language in order to access content. Think about how students may engage in these standards in the content areas you teach. Think about what you notice and what you wonder about these 10 standards. Standards 1 through 7 are language functions. They involve the language necessary for English learners to engage in content-specific practices. They begin with a focus on extraction of meaning and then progress to engagement in these practices. Standards 8 through 10 represent language forms and functions. These 3 standards function in service of the other 7 standards. They focus on some of the more micro-level linguistic features that students need in order to be successful in the English language. Visit the tiny URL shown here to access the full standards document. The 10 standards are the same across all grade levels, but the way that students engage with the standards looks different within grade clusters because they complement the academic content standards. Similar to our previous English Language Development Standards framework, the ELPA 21 standards and assessments are divided into 6 grade clusters: kindergarten, grade 1, grades 2-3, grades 4-5, grades 6-8, and grades 9 through 12. Let's break down an English language proficiency standard. Here, you can see that the grade cluster is grades 2-3. The number here shows you the ELP standard. This example shows standard 1. An ELL can construct meaning from oral presentations and literary and informational text through grade-appropriate listening, reading, and viewing. The next part of the standard shows the English language proficiency levels. ELPA 21 uses 5 levels of proficiency to show the different ways that students demonstrate mastery of a standard. The next part is the proficiency level descriptors. These give us more information about what we can expect a student at the end of each proficiency level to do in relation to this ELP standard. For example, you can expect a student who is at a level 3 to use a developing set of strategies to identify the main topic or message of a text from read-alouds, simple written texts, and oral presentations. Keep in mind that Standard 1 relates to both listening and reading. A student may be at a different proficiency level in these two domains. So what you can expect from a student in terms of listening comprehension and reading comprehension may fall into different proficiency level descriptors. Let's look at another example. This example comes from the 6 through 8 grade cluster. It is Standard 5. An ELL can conduct research and evaluate and communicate findings to answer questions or solve problems. Again, you see the 5 ELP levels listed on a continuum from left to right, with accompanying proficiency level descriptors that show how students at each level can demonstrate mastery of Standard 5. While all students are expected to conduct research and evaluate and communicate their findings, the way students at a level 1 do that, by using information from a few provided sources and labeling the collected information, is different than the way a student at level 4 would gather information from multiple print and digital sources, use search terms effectively, quote or paraphrase the data and conclusions of others, cite sources, and use a standard format for citations. The proficiency level descriptors help educators make decisions about appropriate supports and scaffolds to provide to different students. This final example comes from the high school cluster, grades 9 through 12. It is Standard 10. An ELL can make accurate use of standard English to communicate in grade-appropriate speech and writing. Remember that Standards 8 through 10 are in service of Standards 1 through 7. They focus on micro-linguistic features that students will need to be successful. The 5 ELP levels again show how students within this grade cluster can demonstrate mastery of the standard at each proficiency level. You can see how the scaffold of support, including modeled sentences, is eventually removed as students progress in proficiency. Students at higher proficiency levels can be expected to use more complex language, such as compound and complex sentences, and increasingly complex phrases and clauses. You just saw examples of proficiency level descriptors that show how students demonstrate mastery within each English language proficiency standard. Another way to plan for student success is to use the achievement level descriptors, or ALDs. Achievement level descriptors outline the knowledge, skills, and processes that students demonstrate within each domain: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The achievement level descriptors are similar to a resource that you may already be familiar with, the WIDA can-do descriptors. This ALD example focuses on the domain of speaking. It shows what students at each level are working on in speaking in grades 6 through 8. You can access the full achievement level descriptor document using the tiny URL from this slide. As we mentioned earlier, the English language proficiency standards were written with content standards in mind. It's important to make connections between content standards and ELD standards in order to support students across all content areas. This chart shows Tennessee math, ELA, social studies, and science standards from different grades and example ELP standards that correspond with each. For example, in 4th grade social studies, Students are expected to analyze the causes and consequences of the French and Indian War and recognize Fort Loudoun's role in it. This corresponds to Standard 1, construct meaning from oral presentations and literary and informational text through grade-appropriate listening, reading, and viewing. It's likely that more than one English language proficiency standard will correspond with a given content standard. Review each of these examples and think about other ELP standards that might align with each. Before you move on to video 2, please complete the ELP Standards Assessment in Schoology.